Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is sure to give you nightmares as we join a group of high school students as they enter a dark forest in search of an old shack. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. Please do, of course, let me know down below in the comments. Of course, guys, please do like and share. Without further ado, let's get into tonight's story entitled Bitten Chapter 1. The words, "We shouldn't be doing this," that Eric said before his group of high school student friends entered the dark forest became true when they saw the houses hidden in the trees. It was just going to be a simple walk in the woods to investigate an old shack a friend had found. Unfortunately, this excursion did not go as well as planned and could change the life of the 17-year-old Eric forever. "Rodney, where is this shack of yours? It's getting late and my mum's going to kill me if I'm not back before the new episode of Vampire Diaries," Eric complained as he snapped a stick under his foot. Eric was tall and skinny, not much for the outdoors, even though he does play football, due to the excessive bugging of his girlfriend to get him to play, but he only sits on the bench. He had a grey jacket with red t-shirt underneath and some normal blue jeans. He wore glasses and some regular Converse. The boy was nothing special. He wasn't popular, and definitely not prom king or anything, and he never had a cheerleader even take a second glance at him, unless they were talking about him and his girlfriend. To him, he felt like a freshman, even though he was a junior. Though he didn't need to be popular in school, he had Michelle, his girlfriend of 6 months, not like he's been counting or anything. They had gotten together on Valentine's Day of last school year when they discovered that they both liked each other at the same time. The school has this thing where you can send a rose to your Valentine. As it so happened, they both sent a rose to each other and later found each other to say thanks. When they got it together, it wasn't to talk of the school, and when Eric would tell his friend whom his girlfriend was, they would ask who Michelle was and if she was new, and that's how they liked it. Michelle was even less popular than Eric. She still had a small group of friends, though, that she sat with at lunch before Eric came around. She was mostly quiet and kept to herself. She was about the same height as Eric, her being 5'6" and him being 5'9". She wasn't fat, but she wasn't skinny either. She was average. Everything about her was average. Her looks, her grades, and her life. Rodney, the afro-headed friend that found the shack, laughed. "Man, that episode is long over. Don't you know what time it is?" He pushed some branches away and continued walking. Eric grumbled under his breath. "I knew I shouldn't have agreed to come on this trip." He followed behind the small group of the three, not including him and Michelle. "Eric, lighten up. Who knows, this might be fun." Michelle hugged his arm for reassurance. "Honestly, I don't know what's so fun about being in a forest in the middle of the night." He raised his voice so Rodney, who was leading the group, could hear. "Besides, it could be dangerous," he said directly at Michelle. She gave him a blank look. "Well, I'm having fun." Eric looked up when he heard a sound from the front of the group. "Hey guys, look!" It was Rodney, and not too far off there were what seemed like houses hidden in the trees. Eric got closer for further inspection. "Rodney, we shouldn't be here. This could be private property," he warned his curious friend. "Man, why are you such a worryhead? You need to relax, smoke some dope," Rodney said in return. "I worry because in one of those houses there could be an angry man with a gun and a deadly aim," he spat back. Either he didn't notice or he didn't hear, but something was stalking the group of friends, and it wasn't an angry man with a gun. A long, blood-chilling howl was heard in the distance. This distracted the group long enough for the beast hidden in the shadows to grab hold of Eric, who yelled out in pain and surprise. "Eric!" Michelle screamed and ran after him, but it was too late. He was gone, dragged away. Michelle looked around and she was alone. The others ran at the sight of the beast. "Cowards!" she yelled, hoping they heard. They probably didn't. She looked down at the drops of blood on the ground and then the direction the monster went with Eric. Without thinking, and not a moment to lose, she took off running, following the blood that was most likely from where the monster bit Eric. "Eric!" She called over and over again, hoping for a response. "Eric, can you hear me? If you can make some type of noise so I know where you are." With the trees blocking the light of the moon overhead, the forest was almost pitch black, so Michelle had trouble seeing, and she almost tripped over a couple of times. She was about to panic when she heard a pained moan behind her. "Eric!" He laid on the ground in a fetal position, bleeding, but still alive. "Michelle, I knew this was a really bad idea. Ah." He clutched his shoulder. It was stained with blood, but it had stopped bleeding. In the distance, they heard a loud, beastly roar. "Let's get out of here," he said. Standing up with the aid of Michelle. They took off running in the direction they thought that they came from. Tears poured from Michelle's eyes as she ran alongside Eric. She was so scared. What was that thing that attacked Eric? Why did it attack him? Are we going to get out of this forest alive? We're just done with the questions that were running through her head as they ran. They didn't hear anything following them, but then again, they didn't hear it before the attack on Eric. It could be stalking them in the shadows, waiting for them to forget it was there. They kept running, looking for the truck that had gotten them here. It seemed as though they ran for hours on end, in complete and utter circles. Michelle, tired from running, stopped and said, "Eric, I don't know how you can run with that wound. You should rest. Jesus." And that she sat down against a tree and preened herself. Her auburn hair had gotten leaves in it, and her blue sweater covered in mud and some of Eric's blood. "Well, this sweater's ruined," she said, looking up at her boyfriend. "You have some leaves in your hair." He was examining his glasses in the moonlight. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. My glasses were just blurry, I guess." He was about to continue, but Michelle got up and went over to him to pluck the leaves from his dark brown hair. "Eric," she paused. "Are you okay? I mean, your shoulder. From where that..." She stuttered. That thing bit you." He turned around to face her. "It feels fine. Like it isn't even..." He trailed off when he put his hand to where the bite mark should have been. "Shelley? What is it? What's wrong?" She lifted his jacket to see where the beast had bit through his shirt to the flesh beneath. "It's gone," she gasped. "It's completely healed. Michelle, I feel..." He cut off when he bent over and puked, spilling out what was his dinner on the ground. Eric clutched his stomach as what seemed like cramps attacked his muscles. He gasped, grasping his aching stomach, and almost fell to the ground, but Michelle caught him. She then led his away from the mess he made and gently lowered him to the ground. Eric's mind became blurry and his vision dizzying. The feeling he had was horrible. It was as if his insides were moving around and changing. "Eric, are you okay?" Michelle asked, seeing the discomfort on his face. She put her hand to his forehead and gasped, "Dear God, you're burning up." She was right. He was burning up. A deep burning that was slowly working its way out, but at the moment lingering in his muscles and bones. His muscles tensed up, then relaxed over and over again as they changed and grew, making his body twitch violently. It was as if something had put his body into overdrive, making all those muscles work at the same time. Michelle backed up for some time, watching Eric twitch and convulse in pain. She didn't know what was happening. Maybe he was just dying. Just the thought made her eyes water as she began to panic. "Eric, what's happening?" She mumbled to him, shaking a bit. All she got in response was a pained groan as his back cracked and stretched. Eric watched his nails lengthen into black claws as his fingers thickened and black pads began to develop. He ran his tongue over his changing teeth, truly unsure what to make of what was happening. His thoughts were broken when his back began to lengthen at the base of his spine. He was growing a tail. He couldn't believe it. He watched it get longer and swing from side to side as if it too was having its own series of convulsions from the change. Eric heard Michelle shriek and swung his head in her direction. His vision was still dizzy, but he could still make out her shape, backed up against a tree. He could hear her sobbing. He tried to call out to her name, to comfort her, but another jolt of pain shot up his back. "Michelle, I'm sorry. I wish I knew what was happening to me," he thought to himself. Eric had been sweating from the heat of the change, which was now too much to bear. To try to cool down, he removed his jacket, but it was still too much. He ripped his already torn shirt off, only to discover that he had fur engulfing his abdomen, starting from his groin and working its way up. He quickly got out of his shoes and pants before his feet started to crack and change, forming powerful, digitigrade legs and paws. The heat had now reached his skin that began to tingle with growing fur. The fur engulfed his body as it started to grow on his shoulders. His face also had started to change. The heat of the change focused on his jaw and nose, and soon came the pain as his face began to push out and lengthen as the fur began to engulf his face also. He had opened his change in more, and now he snapped it shut with the conclusion making a snapping sound. He looked at the earth below him. His mind was clearing up and his vision was going back to normal. At first, he had 4 blurry splotches for hands. Then his vision focused and he looked down at 2 thick paws. Or were they hands? They seemed like paws but worked like hands, with opposable thumbs and fingers. He clenched and unclenched them, then examined the sharp claws and tested them against a nearby tree. He left 5 long gashes in the trunk of the tree. The claws were potential weapons on unfamiliar hands that replaced his own. Eric held one hand up in the moonlight. The light brown fur on it shined fresh and new. "These aren't my hands," he said, shaking his head. Eric then cautiously put a hand on his face. He felt his new canine ears, then his forehead and his muzzle. He paused for a moment. "This isn't my face," he breathed, twisting his body around to examine the rest of himself. He had brown fur with a mixture of grey and black. His underbelly was light brown, as were his hands and paws. They were still hints of his natural brown hair colour in his mane. And his body was lean but powerful. He tensed up his muscles and watched them ripple under his pelt. "This isn't my body!" He was about to panic when he heard sobbing in the distance. Michelle. He had almost forgot she was still here. The change was so overwhelming. He'd almost forgot her. She was pressed against a tree weeping. Her face was red and tear-stained. She sat there, terrified. "Michelle." He called out soothingly, trying to calm her as he tried to get used to walking on his new paws. His steps were too wobbly and awkward, so he decided it would be better for both of them if he just sat on all fours. "Michelle, it's me, Eric," he called out again, inching closer. "Get away! Don't come near me!" She sobbed and pressed herself against the tree. Eric was hurt by her reaction, but he understood. If she ran, he wouldn't be bothered. He'd do the same. But it was Eric, Michelle's boyfriend. Would she really be so afraid of the same man that she trusted and loved? Could she still love him even if he was a beast? "Shelley, please listen to me. It's me, Eric, and I don't want to hurt you. I need your help. I don't know what's happening." He got closer to where she was trying to push him away in vain attempts. "Michelle, I need you. I need your guidance." Michelle stopped pushing against his chest for a moment before looking up at him with watery eyes. "Oh, Eric, look at you," she sobbed. "What happened? What happened?" She then wrapped her arms around his neck and wept into his fur. He held her close as she cried. He thought for a moment, not sure how to explain to her what happened. "I was bitten," was the only thing he could say. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that story. I'd like to dedicate that one to my beautiful, beautiful wife, Mrs. DMT666. This show wouldn't be possible without her, and she's an absolute light in my life. So, love you, baby. Happy anniversary. Hope you guys enjoyed that one, of course. Please do let me know down below in the comments. Please do like and share. And as ever, folks, please remember, be safe, not sorry.